Bonjour and welcome back to part 3 of my personal journey through my love of comic books. If you're new why are you starting on chapter 3, but welcome. And then go back and look at number 1 and 2, unless you don't really want to get involved in that really crusty old stuff, because it's not for everyone. It is for me because it's my personal journey. This isn't a encyclopedic commentary on comics through the years. It's what I was picking up and what I experienced. So memories are hazy, but I have tried to piece together as best as I can. Well, it doesn't take a lot of working out, because you go through your collection and you look at the years and you think, oh wow, that come out in there. Anyway, this chapter is the early 80s. All I'm going to do is go up to 1983, because this era of comics for me was chock-a-block. This was my awakening, and I'm not even exaggerating. I was cracking on with my paper round, doing overtime at the paper round, at the newsagents, taking on extra work. Role-playing games came out. I don't know if you know what year it was here, between 80, I'm talking about between 79 and 83 in this video. So my mate picks up Dungeons and Dragons. I'm buying Gamma World and Traveller. I used to love so much, drawing the maps for starships and creating planets and Anyway, that's not why you're here. Shops come along, specialist shops for collectors in England towards the end of the 70s, early 80s, and also comic book conventions. These were exciting times, guys. These were exciting times. A little bit of dough to spend, a lot of comics, and a lot of places to go. All on my bike or the London Underground. If that's intrigued you, if the idea of my personal journey has intrigued you, please join me after my little homemade squab, and we will delve into a pile of comics I've got here, which represents my journey through the early 80s. Right, so here we go. First up, I'm just gonna about the wider awakening, and this there can only be one title for this video, which is the awakening. 1980. I've got to cover up. I think everyone knows my name now is Roy, but the Star Wars fan club. I'm getting newsletters. This is 1980 now. I'm getting, and it was called the Bantha Tracks. I'm sure it was called the Bantha Tracks. Oh, it's too late to open that now, isn't it? It was called the Bantha. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was called Bantha Tracks. So I've joined the Star Wars fan club, early 80s, and all those films are coming out. Blade Runner was 82, wasn't it? And I don't know if I've spoken about Superman. So, you know, from Star Wars onwards, things are progressing. By the time you come along and you've got Alien, like I say, you've got Blade Runner, and that sci-fi explosion in the cinema. Creativity is on maximum output, and it was a glorious time. So coming out of the late 70s and into the 80s, like I say, I'm recognising artists. You know, you're growing up a bit and you're recognising styles and different things. And there was one magazine that came out in 1980 that blew me away, and it was this. So by now I am travelling. I'm getting about into comic shops, specialist Forget the newsagents. There was a shop called Metropolis in Hornchurch in Essex. Funnily enough, just round the corner from where I go now to get my late, like, who knew? Who knew all those years? I'm sure 45 years ago. See, I'm good at maths as well. I still went to school. Anyway, I think this magazine was my gateway into the wider world and history of what had gone before. So Epic would have, like, well, a Frazetta cover for a start. And even though I may have seen his work before, and by the way, quick little factoid, this was the only work that Frazetta ever did for Marvel. You ever get asked that? Ever get asked that in a quiz? You now know. But inside this was different. I don't know what that is. A spectacular sampler. I don't know where I got that from. Look, oh, that was a collector in me that's kept that, a sampler. That must be worth at least $1 million by now, I hope. Anyway, my gateway into, look at that, Richard Corbin. Suddenly I'm looking at Richard Corbin art, thinking, well, and this magazine would resonate forward. 2000 AD, and then this magazine, it was the artistry. That is now what is becoming apparent, and especially when I'm trying to paint those little figures for my role-playing games, and they were only the small ones, you know, the different scale there. So my mate had Dungeons and Dragons, I had Traveller, and the Traveller figures were the tiny ones. I forget the was it 15 mil? Anyway, any RPG fans, let me know in the comments. But I had the boxes of the Traveller figures, and they were tiny. The bigger D&D ones, they were nice. You could paint them properly. You know, this is pre-Warhammer. Look, a Gulassi cover on this magazine. So around all of the comics I'm already buying, the British, I'm now moving into this realm. Oh, look, a Kaluta cover. And I can remember being so excited picking these up, thinking, wow. And at the point of picking this one up, Hildebrandt cover, I'm looking at her name thinking, oh yeah, they're the ones that did the pre-production work on Star Wars. Like I say, it's like properly expanding. And then Barry Windsor Smith. And on from there, Conan. I mean, this just eclipsed. By the time this came out, I'd only been exposed to the early Barry Smith before he put Windsor in his name. Well, no, it was always there, but before he introduced it, before he was BWS. So when he produced some absolutely outstanding artwork for this magazine, all I'd known was that the stuff he'd done with Marvel. Blew my mind. Neil Adams. I'm only showing you these covers because, and obviously we're getting out of 1980, Neil Adams cover, because these are names. Howard Chaykin was one. Howard Chaykin was one that would, by the end of this video, would produce a comic that absolutely blew my mind. And anyway, so Epic, as with other stuff, was blowing my mind. 1979. So I'm getting into specialist comic shops now to pick up the American stuff. I can get out and about on my bike. I've got enough money to get the bus or get on the tube, and I'm going and picking up with me mates. I'm going into Forbidden Planet. I don't think it was called Games Workshop straight away, but I do recall. My memory is hazy, so please help me out, because I'm sure it was a little shop in Hammersmith that we were going to, or Hammersmith area, right at the end of the District line. Sorry, that's a really specific reference to the London Underground, but where I was right out on the east, like more or less the last stop, but two, on the District line, and we had to sit on the district line the entire length of it, more or less, out to Hammersmith, right out to West London. Oh, what an adventure. 13 years old, at 12, 13, 14 years old, it's an adventure every Saturday. But look what came out in 1979. And until I started looking into stuff, you forget, wow, Frank Miller on Daredevil. And it starts blowing your mind, like. But I will admit, this wasn't the first issue of this I picked up. It's only because you're getting involved in the general, I was picking up Comics International, and sorry I haven't got any, and different bits, and going into comic shops, and there's a buzz about different comics. So here's Frank Miller getting right into it in the early 80s. But this is what was happening. He was turning this into something spectacular. He was dragging, probably not that Ditko cover. He was dragging Daredevil out of the Silver Age, and it would resonate. Another one that had me at hello was Bill Sienkiewicz. Looking at Neil Adams' artwork in reprints, and some of it, I don't think there was a lot in Epic, to be fair, but like that one cover. But like I say, you're starting to recognise people's style. But he was, in the early days, he was kind of, let's say he was really influenced by Neil Adams. And I was lapping this up. But he did develop his own style for the months and months and months. The first, 2 or 3 years he was on this book. Oh, it was glorious to see his style developing over, across, and Frank Miller was developing his style in this stuff. And this is, like I say, these are just all the comics I would have been picking up at the time. And then 1982, at a convention called Comicana in London, Frank Miller was the guest. He was the guest. And there are a couple of these that I have got his signature on. I thought I would have labelled them up, but I couldn't. And I just took a couple of these comics up, just got him to sign them. Just got him to vandalise them with his signature. Now, this is pre-CGC, this is pre-anything like all that kerfuffle. But it was important to me to get a creator I enjoyed his work, just sign the book. Just sign the book for me. Thank you very much, darling. And that was it. So that was all kicking off. Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz are two standouts for me on the American side of things. But having got so involved via 2000 AD, and that was definitely 100% my gateway into the artistry. I know I keep using that word, but it definitely was. And I know I've used it before. But when Brian Bolland, 1982, when you've only seen 5 pages at a time of his artwork in black and white, and then suddenly it's announced there's a 32 page, I don't know if it was 30, maxi series, and it's in colour and in glossy paper. Mind blown. Absolutely mind blown. And this was obviously the beginning of the exodus of the 2000 AD stable. I think it was Karen Berger from DC that came over to England and started stealing. I'm going to say stealing, actually, yes. But she did recognise the talent. Look at the covers like this, look. Did recognise the talent of guys got Bolland. Dave Gibbons was going to go on to do Green Lantern and all that. But that's all still in the future at the moment. But these comics are now part of my world. I'm picking up those 2000 AD albums that are collecting. This was from Metropolis, actually, in Hornchurch. So I could literally ride on my bike from where I live with my mates and get American comics. Rom was another one that I haven't dug out, but I can just remember picking up certain comics, and the guys there just had them laid out on tables. It was almost like going to a. And again, if there's anyone from Essex that ever went there, it didn't last long. Metropolis, it was called, in Hornchurch. And it was almost like laid out on tables like a boot sale or a market. It wasn't a proper, it was a proper comic shop because it was getting all the American imports in. But me and my mates didn't know what to do. It was a whole new world opening up. A whole new world. And not least lovely Bolland. Just lovely Bolland covers. So DC had stolen our Bolland. And look at the dates. I mean, I know I'm talking about, I said I'd stop at 1983. This is the early day. This is even, like now we criticise Image comics from the 90s when we were saying, oh, all the artists got behind on their... the date on this first one is December 82, right, issue 1. Issue 10 was March 1984. And then, by the time we get to the last issue, we're in April 1985. So 12 issues has taken old Bolland, bless him, but it was worth it, Brian. It was worth it. It rocked my world, so that's all that matters. And forgive me while I put these down and get them out of my way. Over at Marvel, we had the death of Captain Marvel, which I haven't got anymore, so I can't show you. I will get it back, don't you worry. But what I have still got is a graphic novel. Nowadays, that word is bandied around. Well, not bandied around, it's just part of the vocabulary. But when an original graphic novel of new work comes out, not a collected edition of reprints, and again, P. Craig Russell, this is where I fell in love with all of these artists. Well, all of the artists are still the old school. Jim Starlin, Dread Starlet, and then this, because this was creator owned stuff. Dread Star, he had with First, I think. Oh, let me know if I got that one right. Weren't Eclipse, I think it was First Comics. The explosion of the independents. Look, who doesn't remember this? It was just new and different, this format. And again, it was like comics for grown-ups, these graphic novels. It was like self-contained stories, not part of any continuity. You might have been picking up X-Men or New Mutants, but that was for the adult. I don't know, it just felt grown up. It didn't feel like say for myself going to school, it didn't feel like kids were, comics, what, Beano and Dandy. You could say, no, shut your mouth and stop it and educate yourself. Not that they would listen while they was punching me in the face, but that's a story for another day. Pacific Comics, here we go. Mike Grell, he had done a mega run on Warlord, not the British one I mentioned in episode 1, a fantasy character called Warlord, Mike Grell. And suddenly we get creator-owned comics. At the time, it just meant this was new. This wasn't Marvel or DC. It just meant, wow, this was new. Daredevil, to be fair, came across as something creator-owned. Obviously, Camelot 3000, Brian was allowed to expand his horizons. But the creator-owned Explosion, and in one of these is obviously, look at these lovely Mike Grell covers. You could tell as you can see, I was lapping this up like there was no tomorrow. And then we get Rocketeer. That Pacific Comics presents Rocketeer. Dave Stevens. And you got Steve Ditko and Dave, you can't tell me the creators weren't loving this as well. Pacific Comics, like I say, it blew my mind. You had Alien Worlds and you had Twisted Tales as well, which had Bernie Wrights and stuff. Well, I haven't got them anymore. But anyway, I can't show it. Look at these. These are beautiful covers. Artwork like this was so stunning to me at the time. Was this a William Stout? I remember the cover, but I couldn't remember who'd done that. John Bolton. Another British artist that had gone over to find fame and fortune. Another Frank, Mr. Brunner. Another beautiful cover. And like I say, so it was shops and conventions like Comicana. And this was just before UCAC started up, which was the UK Comic Art Convention, which I would attend every year throughout the 80s. But this is early 80s now. So you had Comicana in 82. You had comic marts, like marketplaces that were starting to spring up as well. Not just in London, but, dotted around. Because I think the first convention was held in England, was held in Birmingham. Anyway. But let me know if this is sparking off memories for you lot. And look, so even though this is dated 82, this would have been 81. This would have been published in 1981. And that little label there, look, signed by Mike McMahon, Alan Grant, Dave Gibbons and Brian Bolland. Look, so I'm getting out and about. And I'm going to Forbidden Planet in London. Amongst others, that wasn't the only shop available. Dark Lay Worth and Golden-Eyed. And there were a couple of, like I say, Metropolis. And there was Rodney and Ian's in Barking, in Essex, where I still go to. He's moved around, but that is my local comic book shop now. How about that? How about that? Amongst one of the big ones that blew my mind in 82 was this comic. And you must forgive me because I've got to hold up this entire volume. Now that comic right there, V for Vendetta, Miracle Man, Laser Eraser and Press Button. Who remembers that? Now the reason, and again, like I say, this is a personal memoir. I went to a comic convention and all right, it was with my mum, all right, because they had an all-night movie. I don't know if this was Comicana 82. I don't think it was. But again, the memories are hazy. And my mum, for my birthday, treated me to these binders, which I shouldn't have put my Warriors in because look how yellow they are. But I can't not. I will never, as part of my collection, because I was there with my mum and she treated me to 2 of these binders. So I've got all of my Warriors in these ridiculous binders. They should all be lovingly bagged and boarded. But I've never took them out. But Warrior was something else because again, it was a lot of the artists that you recognised. There's a nice advert for Forbidden Planet by Bolland. Nice Gary Leach cover. Oh look, Paul Neary with Madman. That's a brave cover for a comic. Des Skin. Here we go. Steve Dillon. Don't call him Kevin Dillon in the early one. I don't know why I've done that. No, I'm sure I didn't. Oh, look. Say no more. I don't know if David Lloyd took the photo. But look, you can see V for Vendetta. I don't know if you can spot V for Vendetta up there. Look. I don't know if Des Skin took that photo and didn't have to pay an artist because that would have been right up his street. I don't know if artist on that. That looks like Paul Neary. Doesn't look like Gary Leach. But look at these. This was a class act. This was Des Skins, who had progressed from British comics through Marvel UK and had done some impressive work on the Hulk Weekly with some of these creators, may I add. So you would have been dealing with Steve Dillon, Paul Neary. Don't know if Gary Leach was there. Anyway, which led on to the release of this, a brave, in the annals of comic book history, and for my personal journey, this comic is up there with 2000 AD. That's all I'm going to say. If I had to do a league table, this has got. It's got to be, and also because it's an anthology and it's so packed with different writers and artists doing different, a comic that's got V for Vendetta, Miracle Man, and Father Shandor, and etc., Axel Press Button, and all the shenanigans. But because it's an anthology and it's so packed of different talent, I don't know why I didn't contemplate that. Yeah, I've got to say, I think that's second to 2000 AD. For me, ever, as its impact on me and the creative talent, and like I say, I know I keep saying that word, that awakening, that awareness that there are different writers and artists that are doing different genres and styles. Not all of them you're going to like, not every single one. And then another one. Now this one blew me away. Oh yes. Now, I don't know if they do collected editions of this anymore, but do yourself a favour and try and track down it. I don't think these will be £1 million to track down on eBay or whatever. I'm sure they don't go for that much anymore, which I find quite surprising because this was groundbreaking. This comic right here, Ken Brusniak, either on the lightning. I hide behind it. So I just put my new teeth in. Ken Brusniak. The lettering that you look at now in a modern comic by comic, what is it? It's not Comic Craft, is it? What is it? Richard Starkins. It might be his Comic Craft, isn't it? But anyway, whatever modern comic book lettering you're looking at and being impressed by, if you're as nerdy as I am, it started here with Ken Brusniak on this. And it was Howard Chaykin just taking a step back from what rocks his world and honing himself and directing himself. I don't know who the editor was on this with First Comics, but I do enjoy when extravagant creators like Chaykin are just reined in a little bit, not controlled and moulded and told to produce a product, but just reined in enough. And that is a perfect example of where a creator can just create something so impactful, beautiful, brutal, but most of all, groundbreaking. And not as groundbreaking because it only lasted 3 issues. Nevertheless, I really did enjoy it. Silver Hills, Scott Hampton's artwork. I think his art might be resonating back to Epic, but like I say, this 2 or 3 years, like my mind. This is when I've got a diary entry. I've shared it on Threads actually. And if you're not on Threads, you comic book geeks, get over there. There's a really great, positive community over there that, yeah, you can't. No, I'm going to stop myself right there. I'm going to stop myself right there because this is about yesteryear. Just and not as groundbreaking, but nevertheless resonated. Scott Hampton, his artwork on this. It was only 3 issues, so it didn't last long. And I think that took him about 2 years to complete. Anyway, I love this. And it's just more independent, you know, Pacific Comics we're going to lead on to. And talking of independence and Brian Bolland doing Camelot 3000, 1983 was when this came out, but so that's 6 years since the first issue of 2000 AD to here. That's quick. 6 years sounds like a long while. If you used to say now, oh, in 6 years' time, like you'll be a great comic book artist, you know, if you used to going to talk to Brian in 1977 or 76. Not that he wanted that, but when you look back, 6 years weren't a long while to get from the first issue of 2000 AD and what Brian was doing before then, and then these iconic covers. Look, brand new. But the exciting thing was to see a brand new piece of artwork from a favourite comic artist. That's what this whole thing, you know, this whole episode, for want of a better term, is about. You know, look, just seeing a brand new cover, and there's only reprints inside that I've got before, but they're in colour. So that was quite exciting. I don't think, you know, it's like seeing this in colour was quite exciting, but, you know, seeing the strips themselves in colour, when they're designed for black and white, it works in black and white. There's something a bit raw, gritty, rough and ready about it that colour and gloss and sometimes loses. But Brian Bolland's artwork on glossy covers, I mean, how many glossy covers, American comic book covers, has he done now? All these years later. You know, what we took, 45 years later, how many covers has our mate Brian Bolland done? Love it. Love it. They're obviously in Cursed Earth now. And here is, I think that was the cover of 2000 AD when they won the Eagle Award, because obviously there's an eagle there and they won an award. You can see how clever I am, can't you? Anyway, here's another cover. The Origins. And that about wraps it up there, because I think that's long enough, don't you? Because the 80s, I don't know how many videos I'm going to do that gets me out of the 80s within half-hour episodes. And I know this one's gone over half hour already because I'm looking at the timer. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you've stayed with me this far, I really do hope you've enjoyed that. I know it's a little bit UK-centric, but I hope that doesn't limit the appeal of what I'm talking about vis-a-vis a personal journey through comics, because there are a lot of American. It's kind of like the US explosion, but in a way it was the UK explosion going on over there. And after my little scroll, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because I'm looking at them now. I've already dug out a few comics. I'm going to do you a little trailer. Let me know what you think of the Hog's new trailer for episode 4 of my memoirs after my scroll. But thank you so much if you followed me this far. I really do hope you've enjoyed that, and I've summoned up a memory. I've kind of teased out. I've sparked something off from your childhood or from years gone by or from when you was at college or whatever it was. I really do. Please let me know. That would cheer me up no end. And until next time, I'm going to bid you all adios. So if you are still here, I tell you what, you get the Hog No prize if you're still here, because this is the teaser for episode 4, because I've already got these comics out, so I might as well start showing them off. Come on, we all know what this one was, don't we? And this was 84, and I couldn't go here. I couldn't go here on top of everything else I've just been waffling about in that video. This was 84. Yeah, this was 84 as well. Look, Alan Moore on Swamp Thing. But if I went there and here, and look, look, first issue signed by Alan Moore. That's what I'm talking about. Going to just having a copy of a comic he's written, and I don't know, Forbidden Planet signing. Howard Chaykin would be progressing from American Flag onto a naughty little title, which used to come in bags. You know, like the Red Band. Marvel does Red Band. You've got nothing on Howard Chaykin. This was just porn. You can't excuse it. It was porn. This wasn't. This was beautiful. And again, my old mate Bolland, wasn't he leading the charge or what? And Alan Moore. Come on, see what I did there? See what I did there? And then more 2000 AD, boys and girls. Leading on to this, look, Brendan McCarthy, Peter Milligan, Paradox. Oh, there's one more artist who's Brett Ewins. Look at this stuff. Anyway, that's all for next time. And so, bye now. Love you. You must be the sexiest of my sexiest subscribers if you've stayed here this far. Let me know if you've stayed here this far, and I will give you the ultimate no prize from the Hog. Don't know what that means. It probably just means me praising you on social media. Well, Threads, really. I don't do anything else. It will mean me praising you on YouTube and Threads. And you will be the bestest ever. Enough said.